Welcome to the Academic Woman Amplified podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Mazak, tenured full professor, mom of three, and firm believer that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here listening today. Today, I've got a great episode for you because I'm talking about the 5 myths about your post-tenure career. There's so many beliefs about what happens when we reach that magical milestone called tenure. But today we are busting some of those myths and showing how getting tenure, although an amazing accomplishment, isn't magical. Actually, there's a lot that we believe will happen post-tenure that doesn't. And that's what we're talking about today in the 5 myths about your post-tenure career. All right, let's get started. Here's myth number 1. Myth number 1 is that your workload decreases after tenure. Now, I've talked to a lot of post-tenure women and worked with a lot of them in our Navigate and Elevate programs. And all of them will assure you that your workload does not, in fact, decrease after tenure. I think that this comes from this idea, and this is a very ingrained in academic culture idea, that pre-tenure, you kind of have to be quiet and go with the flow and not say no to too many things because you don't want to make anybody mad. And you want to be included in department initiatives potentially, right? So everybody's kind of like, I better not say no too much. And that's a big problem post-tenure, right? Just not saying no. Well, what actually happens is we think that post-tenure, we're going to be able to say no. And that's not true either. In fact, if you haven't been flexing your say no muscle pre-tenure, you are going to have to radically change and develop that muscle post-tenure. And if you haven't, then actually it's going to be the same. Your workload will continue to suffer from what I like to call creep, right? Activities creep, things that somehow kind of seem to get added to your plate without you all the time noticing. And then before long, your plate is completely over full. So saying no pre-tenure is a good way to practice for saying no post-tenure because your workload definitely does not decrease. That is absolutely a myth. Another reason that your workload doesn't decrease post-tenure brings us to myth number 2, which is that you can finally focus on your work. So again, we have this belief that pre-tenure, we have to, do things for other people, or we aren't going to truly dig into what makes ourselves and our work unique because we're a little scared that we'll put people off or that we're going to come across as brazen or brash or pushy. And we don't want that because we think that all of those things are going to hurt us when we go up for tenure. Well, actually, again, it's the same thing as your workload decreasing, right? As myth number 1. We think there's this magic thing that happens. We get tenure and then finally, all those things that have not quite been quite on mission for us, that magically they'll disappear and you get to work only on your on mission cup filling, work that you're super excited about. And that's not true. It's all a process, whether it happens pre-tenure or post-tenure, of getting super focused and making sure that the projects you're working on are your favorite projects, are the things you really want to do, are moving your career forward in a way that is directed by you. That doesn't change post-tenure. So a lot of women I talk to post-tenure say I thought I was finally going to be able to focus on my work, but actually I'm doing more stuff for other people now post-tenure because now post-tenure, what happens is that you're not early career faculty anymore. Instead, you are the one protecting early career faculty. You're the one mentoring early career faculty. And potentially, this happens a lot, right? You are now in a position where you are expected to take on more departmental administrative responsibilities, whether that is actually serving as a department chair or an associate chair or doing some other kind of administrative tasks. Post-tenure women say they are overburdened by administrative tasks that they never really wanted in the first place. And that they are often feeling like they're putting out other people's fires all the time. That like stuff comes up in the department and they feel like, well, because now they're post-tenure, they have more power and they have more ability to stand up to stuff that's happening in higher up admin, or, they have more responsibility for shaping the direction of the department. And all of that is administrative work. It's leadership. And it also comes with it a bunch of admin stuff. It might mean going to more meetings. It might mean writing more reports. And none of those things are necessarily helping you to focus more on your own work. So myth number 2 about your post-tenure career is that you can finally focus on your work. And just like pre-tenure and just like every moment of your academic career for your whole life, you have to figure out and be proactive about focusing on your own work and bringing the focus back to your own work. All right, let's move on to myth number 3. Myth number 3 about your post-tenure career is that you'll actually get paid what you deserve. Yes, this is sad that this is a myth, but true. A lot of tenure promotions come with a small salary bump. You might have thought the salary bump was going to be bigger. When you get there, it's just not still enough. And so a lot of post-tenure women say to me, like, I've been working so hard for so long, and I still feel like I'm struggling to make ends meet. And that is a sad reality of the world post-tenure for women, people socialized as women particularly. So what the heck can you do about that? Well, post-tenure is a great moment to think about whether your institution is still serving you. The institution that you came into pre-tenure and you won tenure there, maybe you've had tenure for a while, and you might be looking around going like, this is not where I imagine myself for the next 15 or 20 years. And then you need to go through a process of figuring out what that next step for you looks like. Is it a movement like more into admin, which would give you a pay bump? Is it bringing in huge amounts of external funding so that you could create more time freedom for yourself by having a team of researchers working with you where you could outsource tasks or delegate tasks to, a postdoc or a team of graduate students where you're really stepping into a leadership and mentoring role rather than the one doing every tiny little thing all the time? Is it that you want to find a different institution and change institutions? Maybe you want to go from being faculty to being a researcher or heading up a research center or founding a research center. There might be just a ton of different things that you could do in order to give yourself a pay raise and also give yourself a career raise, like an up level in your career. Hey there, listeners. I'm interrupting, myself to bring you this note about our Elevate program. Now, we are enrolling people for Elevate now. So I just want to give you a little heads up about what the program's about and what we're offering for people who join now. Elevate is a program for post-tenure people who are ready to up-level their career. Now, what does up level mean? Up level means that you know there's something bigger out there for you. You know that you didn't work this hard this long to be feeling the same way you felt pre-tenure or worse in your job. You've got big goals, you've got world-changing ideas, and you're ready to make your academic life serve you instead of you feeling like you are in service of your academic life. Now, Elevate is a program that we have decided we are only running once in 2021. That's right. We're only running Elevate one time in 2021, and it's going to start in February and end in July. But here's the thing. Why are we enrolling for a program that starts in February? Why are we doing that now? Well, Elevate's a 6-month program, and during the 6 months, you get 6 key workshops that are going to help you create a plan and enact it for whatever that next level thing is for you post-tenure. And you get one-on-ones every month and group coaching every month. It's a very hands-on program, and you work very closely with our coaches. And that's why people in Elevate have great success in just a 6-month short time period. But we're enrolling now during October for a February program because there are people who are ready to get started now. And actually, we're already filling spots. So if you want to get in, here's the juicy stuff that you get when you enroll now. You get 2 extra one-on-one calls to use during 2020. So instead of having 6 calls, you get 8, and you can use them before the new year to solve your writing problems now, to get yourself to the end of 2020 in a hopeful and potentially more happy way, definitely a more supported way. Now, you also can come into our community and start to have the benefits of our high-level Amplify and Elevate community. And those include our monthly focused peer review sessions, office hours with me and my coaches, special workshops and planning sessions, and our January retreat. We're doing a 2.5-day virtual retreat that you must join Elevate during 2020 to be able to go to. It's going to be amazing. Our virtual retreats, actually, we've gotten pretty good at them this year, and people really, really love them. And you will find it to be a great way to start off 2020. So if you want to know more about Elevate, I encourage you to find the link to the application in the show notes and apply. By applying, you will start through our process, which is a process of actually vetting people. Like, we are very selective with this program. So when you apply, you'll get started during that process. You'll get all your questions answered. We'll get our questions answered about you, and you can get started right away. All right, now we are at myth number 4 of the 5 myths about your post-tenure career. Myth number 4 is what got you to tenure will get you to full. Now, this is so juicy. I love this one. Okay, so a lot of people kind of go through their academic careers without this kind of insight. So this is for you, whether you are post-tenure right now or whether you hope someday to be post-tenure. Every stage along the academic path needs to see you get better at your systems and processes. And maybe get better isn't the way to talk about it. It's actually change your systems and processes and practices. So what do I mean? Well, think about yourself as a graduate student. Think about what worked for you in terms of getting writing done or getting reading done or staying up with the literature. What you did at that moment, I bet, is really different from what worked for you once you were in a tenure track job. So for me, for example, this is hooked to the fact that I was pre-kids when I was getting my PhD. So during my PhD, I had the great luxury of not needing to work a separate job outside of the university. I worked a job inside the university as a TA teaching in the English department. And I didn't have a family. I was really had a lot of control over my own time. My physical health was different than it is now, 20 years later. I was living in a different place. There's so many differences between what I was able to do and the things that worked for me to get work done as a graduate student, than now. Or even then, once I became a mom and was dealing with sleep deprivation and parenting small kids and everything that goes along with that. There are just so many factors that change as your life changes. So just to be a little more specific, when I was a graduate student, I could read all the time. I pretty much had carte blanche to do with my time what I would. So I could get my reading done at kind of all hours of the day. I didn't have to worry about feeding anybody else. So I could just read through lunch if I needed to. It really was a whole different way of, to manage or probably not manage my time. I guess I would say my time needed less management then because I just had more control of my own self and my own decisions when I was a grad student than I did once I was on the tenure track and I had small kids. So a lot of stuff started to feel out of control and actually also be out of control. The other thing I could do was I really was able to write with big blocks of time when I was a graduate student. But once I got on the tenure track, those big blocks of time completely disappeared. And because I was a parent as well, my nights and weekends also were not available for me for writing. And if you've heard my podcast before, you've probably heard me say that I refuse to get up early to write. It's not my thing. It can be your thing, and that's awesome. But especially once I was a parent and my kids are notoriously bad sleepers, there was no getting up before them. It was not an option. So I needed to find something. I needed to change my writing practice to adapt to both who I was and what was happening to my body physically at different stages of my life, what was happening to me kind of culturally, socially at different stages of my life, and what was happening career-wise at different stages of my life. So again, now I'm a full professor. I am 45 years old at the recording of this podcast. I'm much more in tune with what works for me and being able to own what works for me and figure out how to best use what's working now, to my best advantage. I actually am over that idea, you should do things a certain way, especially when it comes to writing, that there's this idea that you should write every day if you're going to be prolific, or you should do this, or you should do that. And I know what works for me. And that's what we teach people in our programs too. We teach people methods and to develop a better relationship with their writing. And that helps them to really lean into what works for them. So this is all to say that myth number 4, right? What got you to tenure will get you to full is a myth because your systems change. You have changed. So I always coach people, and at the time of this recording, it's 2020. And so there's a lot of trauma happening. There's a lot of crisis, and people are feeling it kind of on a collective level and also on a personal level. And that is something that has made people need to reevaluate their writing practice, because you are a different person now than you were in January 2020. In October 2020, you're a very different person than you were in January 2020. That means you need to reevaluate all of your systems and processes. So I always say anything major that happens either in your career or in your personal life or in your health is going to have to necessitate you reevaluating your systems, processes, and practices. So what got you to tenure will definitely not get you to full. You're going to have to tweak and refine those strategies, and you really get more and more self-reflective as you move up the academic ranks. All right, we've covered 4 of the 5 myths about your post-tenure career. They were, number 1, your workload decreases after tenure, definitely a myth. Number 2, you can finally focus on your work, also a myth. Number 3, you'll get paid what you deserve, sadly, a myth. And number 4, what got you to tenure will get you to full. Now I'm ready to reveal myth number 5, which is your next steps will be clear. I think one of the things that's most disorienting about life in academia post-tenure is that tenure, whether you are a PhD student, whether you're adjunct faculty, whether you're on the tenure track, whether you're a postdoc, this giant milestone of tenure, this like overly hyped, revered milestone of tenure has been there for you throughout your whole career. And even when you're a PhD student, for a lot of people, the goal is a tenure track job and then, of course, getting tenure, right? And I'll say also, rightfully so in many ways because of the stability, potentially some pay increase, that tenure represents, for better or for worse, right? The system that we're in. That goalpost has been there for so long for you that once you pass that goalpost, it feels actually disorienting. So that's why, or this is a contributor to why so many women don't go up for full. And there's this big drop off at each of the promotion tiers because you knew so clearly that tenure was the goal. You aren't thinking, pre-tenure, you're not thinking that full is the goal. But let me tell you something, full is where it's at. Full for a lot of universities is where the real pay increase happens. It's where the real power happens. And really it is potentially, not in every case, but it can be you really stepping into the position that you really had in your head when you were first starting out and setting your goals in this career. So the problem is that the path to full is, if you think that the path to tenure is kind of vague, which it is in almost everywhere, except for unionized universities, many times the path to tenure is nebulous. It's a moving target. It's in development in a lot of universities because universities are changing. So it's scary because it's unclear. Well, guess what? Full is even less clear. Full is even more political. So what does that mean? I don't mean to depress you because I'm a super optimistic person. What that means is that post-tenure, you have to figure it out for yourself. What it means is that the next steps will not be clear. And that means that it's on you to figure out what your next steps are. Maybe going up for full isn't what you want to do. Frankly, it's up to you. It's up to you what the next thing is. But here's what I'll tell you. If you are post-tenure and you are not a person who's just gonna glide into retirement, there's a lot of people who they get tenure and then they're like, cool, I'm just gonna take it easy, between now and when I retire. I'm gonna guess you're not that person. If you're listening to this podcast, that's not you. And instead, who you are is a person who got tenure, feels disoriented, and now is like, what the heck is next for me? You might even be questioning, is this the career for me? Is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? Because it doesn't feel that great, right? Because I'm still overworked. I'm still underpaid. I'm still putting out fires. I'm still doing other people's projects. So that's why post-tenure is such an exciting time, because the world is your oyster. You can decide what those next steps are for you, and they're not clear. They're not clear because there's so many. There's so many ways that you could go. And the general advice that I give to our clients, especially those in our Elevate program, is like, dream what you want to dream. Envision your ideal circumstances and then make them happen for yourself, right? And if you do that, you'll get full along the way. Like that'll be potentially a milestone, but that you don't have to worry about it if you are building the next amazing thing for yourself. If you if you want to get full, you will. Some people, truthfully, and this is me, I got full and I created something else for myself, which is this writing coaching business, right? And this way of working and surrounding myself with people who I love in our programs and with the coaches and team who work in my company. I've created my own institution and it feels fabulous. It's exactly the people I want to be with all the time. And so really, to go back to that, the myth number 5, your next steps aren't clear. It's your job to dream them and figure out what they're going to be for you. And when you do that, you will be setting yourself up for a very fulfilling mid and late career, which is absolutely what I want for you. Now, I hope that you've enjoyed hearing these 5 myths about your post-tenure career. If you are interested in our program, which, by the way, helps post-tenure women to figure out what that next big thing is for them, and then create a plan and begin enacting a plan to get to those goals. If that's what sounds good to you right now, I would love for you to check out the show notes and apply for our Elevate program. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time loving on yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join the over 7,000 academic women in the I Should Be Writing Facebook group. Just go to facebook.com/groups/I Should Be Writing or search for I Should Be Writing inside your Facebook app. See you inside.